Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Heard from a Pro. We're fortunate to have Nick Keyko from Jobber join us today. I'm not going to give the whole overview of Jobber because I'm sure Nick can do it much better himself. But before we get into it, maybe just a quick overview. What's Jobber, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this industry.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Eric. Happy to be here. The quick overview on Jobber is we work with trades and home service professionals, and it's really everything they need to run their business. So everything from the initial, quoting, scheduling your team to get out there and do the work, to invoicing and getting paid. We sort of handle all of that in one system. So a lot of trades are using multiple different systems or pieces of technology to kind of run their business. We bring it all together into one. So Jobber's been around for about 11 years now. I've been with the company for about 8 years. Back from when we were very small, about 13 people. We're over getting close to 550 now. So we've seen some really great growth over the last few years, and yeah, my start in the industry really came from a random email to one of the founders where they had an opening in the marketing side, and I reached out, and honestly, it's been an incredible journey along the way. Working with our customers and growing that customer base and just continuing to provide a ton of value to them in any way we can.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate that. And maybe you could just walk us through how the product has evolved
Mhm.
over the last 11 years. I mean, that's a long time to be building software, and I'm sure you guys have had a lot. And also,
Yeah,
like the customer, like how has the
yeah.
customer persona evolved over that time?
Yeah, so yeah, 11 years is a long time in the software industry. And even if you think back, like, the iPhone was just coming out, right? So doing this call, like I'm on an iPhone, this technology didn't exist even close to that for 11 years ago. So, we definitely started very web-based with the sort of mobile interface on your phone. But that's been a massive change over the years as well. It's just sort of the way we deliver technology. And obviously for businesses that spend most of their time out of the office, that's been a huge boon in productivity and in getting that technology into the hands of them and their teams. And so, yeah, from the start, actually, our ideal customer has stayed pretty consistent. We are very very focused on the very small business side of the home services and the construction world. So, our ideal customer is in that sort of anywhere from the solo entrepreneur up to the 25-30 employee range. And we see there the challenges are different as you start to scale beyond that. They're different challenges, and then we don't to kind of look to address, but that's a massive market, that very small business side. So we've stayed kind of really focused there. And the sort of the founding story of Jobber is a pretty great one. We started Sam and Forrest. We have two founders. They started working with a local Edmonton painting company, and basically sat side by side, kind of figuring out his problems as they came up, adding them to the software. So it really was and continues to be today, like very customer led in terms of like how we build. And Graham, that first painter, that's his name. He's still a customer today. So he's seen the product and really evolved from kind of where it was. And it's one of our favorite things to do at our company quarterly town halls is show how far the products come, and it blows people's minds when they see what people actually used 10 years ago to run their business.
Totally. And are there certain features that you're getting, the most adoption, or some features that are like wildly more used than others?
Yeah, like scheduling is a massive one. It's sort of the heart of obviously like getting the work done, right? If you can't find a time to do the work and then get your team out there, it's pretty hard to deliver it. So that's always been sort of the kind of the center of Jobber is scheduling, and then from there, we've tried to make it easier to get that new work in through quoting and estimations, and then obviously like finalizing the invoicing and the payments. And then I'd say the most interesting thing over the last few years is really the automation we've added to a lot of that, right? So the less friction we can introduce, or the more friction we can remove, probably a better way to say it, in any of those sort of like workflows or areas of the workflow, the more we see like adoption go up, and people, they're spending a lot of time in the app. Those things get done quicker, and they can move on to the next task that they need to do.
No, that's awesome, and that that totally makes sense. In terms of, like, we've seen a lot of productivity workflow
Hmm.
solutions, a number of different industries, and one of the things that we hear even from our customers is simplicity. Like, how do you take all these different things and make it as simple as possible to use? Because looking at your platform, you're adding more features, you're adding more things, you're adding more bells and whistles. So how do you guys think about, um, you know, adding more value in the terms of
Yeah.
features, also creating simplification within sort of like the first kind of principles of the product?
Yeah, that is honestly probably the hardest part of developing a product, right? And I think especially on the small business side, because when you work with like big enterprise businesses, they've got entire IT teams, they've got their own engineers, right, to handle the integrations between the different handoff points. So for us, it really comes down to, again, like you said, first principles, right? Like we need to build software that is affordable and easy to use. And if you can't do that for small businesses, then they're not going to use it. And so that's it. While it's hard, I think it's always been something we've really put the extra effort into, and that those integration points, whether it is, yeah, like we've got several apps that integrate with the product, and adding more all the time. Those integrations again need to, we kind of like to say, like, just work, right? Everything needs to just work. Because when you're out there and you're on site and you get a phone call and you got to look up a customer, like if that takes you a long time and something doesn't work, that's just going to be a really frustrating experience for the business owner. So um, there's no silver bullet, which I've come to learn. There's very few silver bullets in this world. So it's just a lot of like great designers. We've got some amazing design talent and great engineers, and them kind of working together under strong product leadership, who really pushes them to simplify and make a easy to use product.
No, that makes total sense. And earlier on the call, we talked about your customer being like home in the home services world.
Hmm.
I mean, even like us in the construction industry, a lot of different personas are ordering construction materials, anywhere from the DIY to the remodeler to the builder to the custom home builder, all the way up, um, to the even all the different trades. So with your product touches a lot of different verticals, from painting to lawn care to handyman services. Do you feel like you have to customize certain aspects of the feature set, or is it all kind of one size fits all for the size of your business?
Yeah, so we really try and solve like 80% of the problems for 80% of the market. So there's no way, it's a fool's errand to try and solve 100% of the problems. And that's where we bring in, there is some customizability within Jobber. So if you don't need to do, if certain industries they don't have a lot of recurring work, there are certain things you might not need as much as somebody who has a lot of recurring work. But really, where we see the opportunity is, again, seamless integration with a massive platform that can solve, of third-party app providers that can solve that next 20%. So if you're a handyman or an HVAC company, and you need, like, on-demand inventory and delivery, well, maybe we integrate with something that does that, or maybe we integrate with TOOLBX, and our landscapers using it, not necessarily, but maybe that's, you guys eventually start delivering, landscaping materials, but we integrate with somebody who does need on-site job materials, and that can all be ordered and seamlessly kind of like thought of through Jobber. That's where we really see that the kind of future vision for the product continuing to grow. Do you guys deliver lawn care materials?
Yeah, we do actually.
There you
So
go. There you go.
think
Perfect.
definitely further discussions with
Yeah,
your
yeah.
partnership team. Um, in terms of, you talked about the product team in general, and this is a little bit more focused on, you guys iterating and building tech products with speed. Can you maybe walk us through how you guys are able to really iterate quickly, get products out quickly, how the team works in terms of odd structure with your product development team? Would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our product team tends to focus in areas of we really want our product teams to behave like owners, not renters, right? So they tend to have a focus area where they stay and they build deep customer understanding. They work very closely with our analytics team and our product marketing team to understand sort of what the next 100,000 customers need in their specific area of the job or product. And then within there, it's been a really important part of our build process is, running alphas and betas where we have customers, again, who've been with us 10, 11 years and understand that when something comes out and it's rough, we need feedback. And if we can get that feedback early on, we can then iterate. And then so an alpha gets a little, an alpha goes to a beta, gets a little bit better. And then when it's finally ready for kind of like full release, it's been through multiple iterations of like real world customer feedback. And so, that actually might seem like the antithesis of speed, but again, pushing something out that's not ready is not quick. It's also not great for like a reputation. And with small businesses, right? Like again, there's not this big backup center where it's like, oh, okay, if Jobber's down, I'll just get my job from my redundant server or something. It's like, no, if the app's not working, I don't know where to go next. And so we take that very seriously as well. So it's, again, sometimes building in a little more upfront friction for us allows us to get that out in a more seamless way.
Awesome. No, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that thought process. And we run a very similar
Mm-hmm.
process with our customers as well. Kind of switching gears into like kind of like macro and industry. We've seen obviously things like COVID change the digital landscape within the construction industry, within the services industry. What are you guys seeing in terms of the trends of adopting technology for these SMBs? Like, did you see a
Yeah.
pretty big spike of adoption? Are you seeing more of that trend continue to play out?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the pandemic was, 2 years of just rapid learnings, I think, for everybody. But we definitely saw an increase in demand for, software, I think, across the board and different services that kind of relate to it. And, a couple things there, I think, we've done some research and we've really seen that, in the construction side of our business, handyman, like prices have gone up, right? Like the, supply and demand, the contractors are able to charge more for their services because homeowners are willing to pay for it. And I think that's allowed people to also think, okay, I've got a growing business, I'm charging more. How do I really kind of like maintain this level of service? But then also, I think a lot of pressure comes down from the customers, right? We talk a lot internally about like the Uberization of customer experiences in Amazon. And it's like, it's so easy to get a car. It's so easy to order everything. That has become the dominant expectation. And as millennials as a generation start to own more homes, they like millennials don't like making phone calls, right? You can find many memes on the internet about that. They want to book online. And I think like these sorts of expectations are starting to really make their way pretty aggressively onto providers. So we've seen that, and then obviously like the the lack of people wanting to interact with other people face to face. You made things like digital payments, and I'm not going to my bank, so I can't actually get cash to pay you. Like drove some of that adoption as well.
Yeah, maybe everyone just wants to live in the metaverse instead
Yeah,
of
exactly. Yeah. How do you get
talk, talk.
but this is the thing. Like we exist outside of that, right? You can live in the metaverse, but you still need a house to house your computer and your setup so you can put your VR headset on. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, totally. And are you seeing like a trend in, you mentioned millennials obviously adopting. Are you seeing a trend in the older age group of entrepreneurs and SMBs as well? Like, do you see like a trend in the kind of like the 40 plus?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And we see a lot of a lot of these businesses are family owned. So there's a lot of generational changeover happening right now, I think, as well, just based on sort of, the kind of, very generalized ages of people. But yeah, we see adoption kind of across the board. And, I'd say the market is really still quite early. Like most of the adoption is still to come. And so, when you think about like most of the folks adopting software in the last 5 years have been you know, pretty early adopters. You know, they're the ones who are willing to put up with, a bit rough around the edges. But as we sort of get into the kind of big majority of the market starting to adopt, that will bring kind of people across the age spectrum, and we're seeing that for sure. And I think there's a lot of, I think as a marketer especially, there's a lot of generalizations out there that can be pretty negative. I think the older generations have had iPhones for, again, 10 years. They know how to use them. They're not exactly scared of technology. They're just maybe not necessarily aware that there's a different way to run their business than they've been doing for the past 20, 30 years, which is fair. It's a big change.
Yeah, like awareness is just as important as just like getting the adoption and usability. Totally.
Yeah, I think very few people are scared of software anymore. I think 10 years ago, people were scared. They didn't know what an app was. I think there's very few 60-year-olds who couldn't tell you what an app on your phone does, right? So it's
Gotcha.
changed.
Gotcha. Now, just honing in on like, your trade customers, your construction, your landscapers, like where do you think tech is still lacking? Like where do you think there's like big technological gaps? Like do you think it's on the businesses? Do you think it's on the suppliers? Do you think it's on the homeowners? Like where do you think the gaps are today and in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a I think there's just so much opportunity, right? Like we talked about the metaverse. I do think things eventually like, remote diagnostics will be huge, right? And save a lot of manpower. Like how many times is your furnace broken? They got to come out and they got to look at it and like, okay, I got to get this part. And then they drive back to the shop to get the part. And then, it takes 2 days to fix your furnace versus if there's sensors in there that are connected to the internet that are feeding it back, and maybe it's even proactive, so before it breaks it's a cheaper fix. I think that's coming, right? And I think there's an enablement of that and an expectation. Like, I get my thermostat tells me when to replace my furnace filter. If it didn't, I would probably totally forget to replace it. Classic millennial, I suppose, right? And so I think that's going to be a really interesting one. Like connectivity and even again like potentially virtual diagnostics. And then I think it's kind of what you said earlier, Eric. It's like more integration between like even like companies like ours, right? And so they don't have to go from one to the next to the next to the next. And we've seen it. I'd say e-commerce is a really good example, and Shopify is a great example. It's literally everything you need to run an independent e-commerce business. You can kind of start with Shopify and then connect different tools into it. And they're investing in logistics and kind of trying to streamline that. So as a seller in Canada, you can actually sell to somebody in Europe because there's a logistics partner that can help with the fulfillment of that. So I think it's taking some of those ideas and providing them or bringing them down to like the local level where local services, construction are all delivered. And I think that's the inherent difference between e-commerce and some of the other industries that have been sort of like gone through their technological kind of revolution, for lack of a better word. Is, in our world, all of the services or the majority for the next foreseeable future is delivered in home, in person, by somebody who's in like usually very skilled at what they do, right? And so the more we can take away the non-skilled parts of that job, like ordering supplies and scheduling and just admin paperwork, the more I think it frees them up to actually be more efficient and probably make more money in their businesses.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. I mean, honing in on sort of like the procurement aspect, because obviously, like, a big part of what you guys do on the labor side.
Mhm.
How are you guys sort of handling the procurement and the ordering of parts and ordering of construct, like just the materials itself?
Yeah, so we don't really do any of that. So I would say that probably off the top of my head probably would fall into like the 20%, where there's companies like yours that can, kind of build that service from the ground up and probably I assume you've solved a lot of problems, in terms of getting the company off the ground and really making it work, right? And then I think what becomes interesting is like how does the integration between the companies like Jobber and Toolbox really
Mm.
work again? So it's not like, oh, now I gotta like go figure out how to order them in Toolbox and get back into Jobber. And it's like, how do we just like make it happen?
Yeah,
I think that's where the beauty is going to come in the next few years for sure.
totally. And I mean, just on the labor side, because we're at least seeing at least a lot of feedback in labor shortages across
Mhm.
the services industry and especially in the construction industry. Like, believe it or not, we get inbounds being like, "Hey, we're looking for people." do you know anyone? And
Yeah,
sure, we've
yeah.
got a big network, but that's not really part of our core business today. How are your customers dealing with the labor shortages? And have you guys had feedback or ways to help with that?
Yeah, it is. I would say over my time at Jobber, it is consistently the number one problem. Hey, what problems are you facing in your business? Getting good employees and retaining them. And so what we've tried to focus on is less like, we partner with Indeed. So, if you need to get new employees, maybe, doing it through that platform can really help. Where we really try and focus is helping our customers become better employers so that you can retain your customer your employees longer, right? And so we have our annual conference that we do, Jobber Summit. There's always like there's tracks that focus on helping you become a better employer. How do you even things like benefits, like those are really interesting conversations that a lot of small businesses don't even know how to have. So figuring some of that stuff out, creating content around that as well, to kind of help people. We bring our community together. That is one of the most popular topics, is like, how do you retain your employees? Like, what are you guys doing? Are you paying bonuses? Are you in an industry that might have tips? Are you doing tips through Jobber? Or how do you make sure that flows through your customers or through to your employees? Sorry. And so that's where, we've seen a lot of really good kind of conversation. It's not a problem I would say we directly solve, but again, coming back to like, if your employees feel like your business is sort of, cutting edge, using software, making their job easier. So maybe they don't need to come into the shop every morning and they can just get kind of their first directions on their phone. That saves them 20 minutes of commuting time that you may or may not have been paying them for. And I think those little things can add up to being like an employer of choice, which it's easier to retain an employee once you get a good one than it is to try and find new ones. So it's kind of where we're trying to help, and constantly listening to customers to see if there's anywhere else we can kind of lean in.
Totally, totally. And in terms of, the notion of getting more of the industry to adopt technology, what
Mm-hmm.
are some of the things you guys are doing to encourage the adoption?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just making sure, again, like we talked about, like awareness. I think awareness is still pretty low, that there is, because this industry broadly has been so underserved by technology, that there's technology that's now built for them, right? So they're using accounting software like QuickBooks to run their business. It's like, well, that's not what it's meant for. Or they're using Square to do something where it's not kind of built for that, and they're cobbling together all these different little pieces, and it's frustrating. And so a lot of it is just getting the word out there. Obviously, like hugely my job on the marketing side, but we try and do that in a way where it's like, bringing people into the conversation. So whether it is through like, online events where we can kind of focus on different aspects of that, that's been really, really kind of good for us to help expose people and get our name out there. But also, I think it's a good example of where, like, competition within the industry helps drive awareness of the industry. So I think that's been a big part of it too.
Yeah, and I think there's also a huge lack of education
Mm-hmm.
out
Yeah.
just in general. Like there aren't a lot of great playbooks out there if you want to start your own construction business, or if you want to
Yeah.
start your own remodel business, or if you want to start your own lawn care business. Like there isn't like a template of standardized processes that you should make. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I was talking to some contractors about how they budget and how they schedule and what different apps they use, and there's just like so much fragmentation in the
Mm-hmm.
space. um and I really just think it comes down to like the awareness of education. Like when people come out of school, it's like, hey, I want to do this, where do I start, right?
Oh
And the
yeah.
first place they start is like asking a friend or asking a colleague, but there isn't like clear roadmaps out there,
Yeah.
like some other industries, right? um
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think some of that comes when you bring awareness um, to the opportunities in the industry. And I think like right now
yeah.
we see that a lot, like, especially in the US, where, the cost of like a college university education is incredibly high. Like, we've got like many stories of people who started a lawn care company with, a Toyota Tercel and a lawnmower hanging out the back window, and now like they're running multi-million-dollar lawn care landscaping businesses. Like, that hustle is pretty incredible. But I totally agree with you, Eric. Like simplifying it, so like taking from those entrepreneurs that have done it and helping other people understand, like, here's how you do it. Because the other thing we hear a lot from our customers is like, I didn't get into this to run a business. Like, I love the work, right? I love working with my hands. I love construction. I love, building a landscape in somebody's backyard. But like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize the paperwork, or the like hiring people, or like the amount of paperwork with employees and employee issues. And so it's like, um, yeah, I think you're right on point about like, how do we help people kind of learn that stuff earlier? And I don't think you don't learn a lot of that in school, right?
Yeah,
And maybe that's the long term fix, but
totally. And here's the crazy part, right? And this is for like anyone that wants to get into a service-based business or a remodel or even a building business. Like, you don't need to be extremely skilled to do really well in this industry.
mhm.
You need to show up, you need to be responsive,
Yeah,
and you need to be willing to learn and adapt and bring great people in. And
yeah,
like, those are like the three key skills you need to build a a type of business that's in this industry. And you'd be surprised like how many people are very skilled, but they just
yes,
aren't organized, and they can't pick up their phone, and they can't run a schedule, and they can't, communicate properly. And
hmm
unfortunately, I think it's just, if we can help these contractors and help the industry just
excuse me.
there, there'll just be so much more efficiency within this industry.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think that's where like community can play a big role, right? Like, people helping people helping people. And the thing we've seen that's just been incredible is that, like, house cleaners have a lot of similarities to other high volume, high output industries where you're constantly kind of doing like multiple daily visits or something like that. Or, and when you get these people in the room, like there's fundamental questions like, how do you budget? Like, how do you guys do X, right? And like the conversations between industries have been some of the best we've seen in like our Facebook group and stuff like that. And so I think that's where there's a real opportunity for people who've kind of figured that out to help share some of that knowledge.
Totally. In terms of, getting back into like your journey at Jobber, any sort of valuable lessons or mistakes or things you'd like to share with, anyone sort of getting into technology, or anyone getting into the industry in general.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing I've learned is, um, if you have like a genuine respect and admiration for your customers that you're working for, any sort of like, hard days, hard weeks, which there are plenty in startups. I am the first one to say that. Like, that really helps you get through. And so I've had the pleasure to meet a lot of our customers through trade shows and different kind of ways we get out there. And it's just amazing to see the difference we can make in their business, but also the like stories behind the business. And so I think, that kind of bleeds into the second thing where, for anything you're building needs to be driving customer value, right? Like, if it's not, there's probably not very much point in doing it. And I think, if you can drive value and you can think value first and have a deep understanding of your customers, which comes from actually talking to them, not like, researching them online and thinking them. I think you can be incredibly successful and differentiate yourself from a lot of people who get into it with a great idea, and it just doesn't seem to hit or to resonate. And that's where I think, you know we've continued to push. So I'd say that's my kind of biggest advice is, try find an industry that you respect and like that you can, find good kind of connection to, and then get to know those people like know the back of your hand, because they are the ones you're ultimately kind of building something for.
Yeah, and to add to that, and to my earlier point, it's, because everyone's living in a digital world these days, the expectation of communication, I think, is at an all-time high. So,
Yes.
I think a lot of these small businesses can deliver a lot of value by just communicating, by just saying, "Hey, I'll get you this by this date. Hey, I need this done by this date. Hey, I need you to make a decision by this date." And having that streamlined communication, I think, can add a ton
Yeah.
of that customer value, because a lot of people are super busy. A lot of people are working more hours than they ever have. So as long as they have the communication and they know when things are going to show up at what time, I think that's a ton of value to be given by anyone getting into that services industry. And like you said,
Totally.
scheduling is one of your biggest features, right? So
Yeah.
it's that transparency along the way.
Yeah, and I think the key point there too, because I totally agree with everything you said, is like you don't have to be running like, multiple phones and WhatsApp and text. The big part of what Jobber does too is like centralizing customer communication, right? So you can respond to your customers' text messages and from the product. You can, all your emails are in there. You can look up the history. And I think that is like it doesn't have to be as hard as it might seem. And I think that's kind of the key point again, right? Like making it giving those like Uber, Amazon type tools to small businesses so they can have that level of sophistication and customer communication, but without the like needing a team to kind of run their call center. That's sort of the exactly it. I think you nailed it, Eric. Yeah.
All your insights to not only your journey at Jobber, also the journey, building out a ton of value for this industry. And it's an industry I'm super passionate about. I think it's an industry that's very underserved, and I think
Hmm.
if we can collectively add technology to this industry, I think there could be so much more efficiency, so much more optimization, so much more profitability for all these small to medium sized businesses that are getting into this industry, because there's an incredible amount of demand.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. It was great to chat. I think we're both clearly passionate about the customers we serve, which is I'm always down for a conversation. And yeah, I agree. It's a couple of great products that are really helping people and addressing that massive demand that's out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nick, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Eric. Talk to you soon.